Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hitting the Field. Hitting the Field is your premier sports talk show here at the University of Central Florida. We will cover all things sports around UCF and nationally, whether that's in college sports, the professional landscape. We're excited to be back with our brand new format this year as well. Previously, Hitting the Field was a roundtable discussion, but now we're bringing in some competition. Each episode will begin with an introduction from me, recapping what happened in the last week. Today, that intro is welcoming all of you to our show. After that, our game will begin. Each show will feature 4 panelists. In the first round, 2 panelists will face off head-to-head in different categories. Today, our first round will consist of a head-to-head matchup in MLB knowledge, and then a head-to-head matchup in NFL knowledge. After our commercial break, the winners of each head-to-head matchup will come back for a grab bag of questions spanning all across sports. The winner of our final round will get a featured special on our Twitter called Night Vision, where they'll have 30 seconds to a minute to talk about anything they want, period. So, that is our format, and if you don't understand, you're about to see it in action. Welcome to Hitting the Field. We're 5 games into the World Series, and it has been one to remember thus far. After the Cubs took last night's game 3-2 at Wrigley Field, the series heads back to Cleveland as the Tribe looks to close it out at home. The Cubs trailed 3-1 in the series before last night, but Jon Lester threw a gem through 6 and gave his team a chance to win the ballgame. Carl Edwards Jr. got himself into some trouble in the 7th, and so Chapman had to record the 8-out save. So now, here we stand. Cleveland can close out the series at home, while the Cubs try to make a Cleveland Cavaliers-type comeback and win games 6 and 7 to take the World Series. Now that we've set the stage, I ask you, Dimitri, what was the biggest moment of the game last night, and how do the Cubs keep the mojo going back to Cleveland?
Well, Joe, like you mentioned in your introduction there, Aroldis Chapman to me was the biggest key in game 5. Coming in, recording that 8-out save, even earlier in the year when he said he doesn't like typically to be put in a situation where he has to make 4 or more outs. Coming in, buckling down after Jon Lester threw those amazing first couple innings, and like you said, Carl's Jr. got into a rough patch there. This could be a potential swing for an exciting series when we haven't really been very many interesting games so far. This could be a swing to where we find a fun Game 6 and possibly Game 7 in Cleveland.
Yeah, this is absolutely a way to get things started and really be able to bring things back to a point where everything can be very competitive. So, Chris, what's your opinion on this one?
For me, it's real simple. For Chapman to do what he did in this game, the dominoes had to fall. And by dominoes, I mean the Cubs had to get a lead. Something they've struggled with throughout this series is actually being able to be a little bit of that front runner and protect the lead that they have. And when you look at coming after the second inning where Jose Ramirez gives you a home run, the Indians are up 1-0, you could feel the tension in Wrigley Field, and then to come in, Chris Bryant, hit it over, hit it on out, and then you kind of build that domino effect going forward. Anthony Rizzo follows, and then now you have this 3-1 lead, and it develops this thing where it's kind of like almost a relief and attention, based system. And I think Bryant and Rizzo talked about it, how every single hit, every inning is just tight. You could feel it in the atmosphere. So those, to me, were the biggest moments that allowed for Chapman to do what he did.
And I have to agree with you on that one, Chris. I think the biggest thing for the Cubs going forward is going to be, can they take a lead and can they get to Chapman early on in the game? Can they give him an opportunity to get a long-term save? And so I'm going to have to give you the point on that one, Chris. Great job. We talked about a lack of offense from the Cubs thus far in the series, and with good reason. The Cubs have only had 1 game in the series where they've scored more than 3 runs, and they've been shut out twice. Normally, National League teams are not very excited to go back to the American League ballpark during the World Series, but the Cubs get back Kyle Schwarber to be the designated hitter. Schwarber missed the entire season after leaving the 3rd game of the season with a torn ACL, and now he has been a key to the World Series. So I ask you guys, what has been the most remarkable thing about Kyle Schwarber, and what will his impact be going forward?
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to you, Chris.
I would say just the most remarkable thing about it is that he's even playing at this point. Coming off an ACL injury, it's just amazing to see someone at the biggest stage be able to come in and make the kind of impact that he's had, because he certainly had an impact But what I would look for is to see if he can keep that impact going and building as these crucial 2 games here for the Cubs roll in Cleveland. But mostly because of the two stats that have the 2 teams separated in this point. The Indians have pitched 5 shutouts so far this postseason, which is the most in history. And of all the teams that have ever pitched 4 shutouts in any postseason, they've gone on to win the World Series. And on the opposite hand, you have the Cubs, who've been shut out 4 times so far in this postseason. So you think maybe Schwarber could be the difference, and something's got to give at this point. And that's what I would be looking for with his return as we return to Cleveland for the series.
That's a great point, Chris.
Yeah, Schwarber has 5 home runs and 27 at bat during the postseason, during his postseason tenure. He's 23, he's young. The ACL and LCL is definitely a devastating thing to go through. But at this time, they need him. Big players make big plays. And when you have a guy who you could kind of see in game 1, like the potential, when he gets that double, now it's kind of like, okay, what can he do going forward? And honestly, in my opinion, I don't even think it's just on him. If you look at Chris Bryant, he was going through it, 1 for 14 up until that, hit that led to everything kind of going through and kind of loosening up your hits. It was the same thing that we saw from Rizzo against the Dodgers, in which that struggles, and then he kind of pulled the tide in game 4. So I look at their lineup as a whole. Getting Schwarber bolsters their lineup, and with their lineup bolstered, now they can go forward, and I think they can do the unthinkable and start to pull this thing together and win game 6 and 7.
It's another great point, Chris. I'm going to have to give that one to you. As we said before, the Cubs are down 3-2 in this series. They've struggled offensively, but they had back-to-back wins, or as they head back to Cleveland, rather, with Kyle Schwarber in the lineup. Jake Arrieta set to ready to go on full rest in Game 6. So, quickly, what is the key for the Cubs to take Games 6 and 7 and their first World Series since 1908?
I would say definitely the fresh pitching that they have. You mentioned Jake Arrieta. It's going to be key if their offense doesn't get going, like we hope it will with Schwarber back in the lineup and Chris Bryant maybe finding his bat. It'll be really important that if that doesn't happen, that the pitching and the defense steps up, because that'll be key, because Cleveland's pitching staff has been so dominant in the first couple games of the series. So that's what I would look for as a key for the Cubs.
Absolutely, Meech.
You mean Chris?
No, I said absolutely, Meech. Chris, it's to you.
I thought you were saying. All right, for me, I think it's going to be on Jake Arrieta. One of the things and the concerns was him taking command. And I think he talked about it a little bit about, how he wants to take command early, and, be able to take advantage of the things he sees, because it can kind of get out of hand. So for me, I think it's that pitching from the Cubs. We know what the Indians are coming with. We know how their defense is, but we also know how capable the Cubs defense is. And so when you're looking at that, and we already alluded to the lineup of the Cubs, but it's going to be, I think this game's going to be predicated on their defense.
So you're just repeating what Meech had to say. He gets the point. Now that we've spent the entire segment talking about the Cubs, maybe we should discuss the team that's actually leading the World Series so far. Cleveland takes back the 3-2 lead, going home, just needing one game to clinch the title. Their pitching has been dominant, and the timely hitting to match has been their recipe all postseason long. So I ask you, Chris, how does this team pull off a victory and make it back-to-back titles for the city of Cleveland?
I think it's going to be on their pitching, as I said before. Bauer, following this game after, he kind of was that scapegoat that people were able to talk about. After the game, he had this quote. One of the fans was like, "Thanks, Bauer," yelling at him, and he said, "Be sure to thank me when you lose in 6." And that told me that's a microcosm of how Indians feel. They think this is their year. They think that regardless of what the Cubs did, and history says that those teams that are the best team in the MLB don't always win it. And it would just be so Cubs-like to soil this, and so Cleveland-like to win this, especially with the Cavs doing what they did. For them to win this for their city, I think it's going to be a lot on guys like Bauer, who hasn't pitched as much as your Tomlins and stuff like that, and I think can provide some of that boost that they need to win.
Right. And Meech?
For my keys, I would say it's motivation. the Indians have been dominating this World Series up to this point, and all they've been hearing about is the Cubs this, the Cubs that, because, the Cubs obviously have the drought going on for them, but Cleveland in their own right has the World Series drought going on as well. And I feel like that kind of motivation that no one's even talking about us, even though we're the team that might win the whole thing, I think that could really fuel them to do what it takes to, they're playing both games at home as well.
Right.
So the pressure from the crowd, that should propel them forward to hopefully a World Series win.
I have to agree with you on that one, Meech, and you're going to get the point there. So it's all tied up, and it's as simple as this. Final point, who you got? Who wins the series?
You want to go ahead?
Just simple, one word.
I got the Cubs, Kluber pitching in Game 7 if it comes to that.
So...
I'm sorry. I got the Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland.
I got the Indians.
You
Hasn't happened since 1985. Kansas City Royals come back from a 3-1 deficit. I got the Cubs doing this thing.
So you got the Cubs.
Yes, sir.
You win. Cubs win.
Oh,
Let's go.
Moving forward, Chris
Let's
moves
go.
to the next round.
Let's go.
And
What
so
we
we
doing
head to
now?
the NFL.
What we doing?
We
now?
will officially
What are you doing?
be
Let's sit down.
halfway through the NFL season after tonight's Monday Night Football contest between Minnesota and Chicago. As we move past the halfway point of this year, it's always a good time to reflect on what has happened thus far throughout the season. There have been impressive performances, shocking teams, and disappointing play as well. All that said, we will bring in our final two panelists of this segment, Carl Max Millionard and Jimmy Calhoun, to discuss. So, Carl Max, we will start this one with you. The consensus around the NFL media seems to be that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the Patriots are the best team in football after their 7-1 start. So I ask you, and we're going to have to go through this quickly because we ran long on the MLB, are the Pats the team to be reckoned with?
Yes, they are the best team in the National Football League right now. We can't say anything about the Pats that we haven't said for the last decade. They just have been the best duo, Tom Brady and Coach Belichick, the best QB coach duo in NFL history, hands down. They should arguably rename the Vince Lombardi Trophy to the Bill Belichick
Absolutely.
Trophy. They've just been so dominant no matter what. They go through suspensions with Brady this year. They started off 3-1, almost 4-0. And Brady's just been lights out, thrown 7 touchdowns, no interceptions so far in the year, highest passing rating in the NFL this year. So definitely they are the team to reckon with in the NFL this year.
And Jimmy?
The Patriots are the best team in the NFL. I don't even think it's a debate. But everyone talks about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Let's give some love to the best tight end in the game, Rob Gronkowski. A great defense with great linebackers, and Dante Hightower and Jamie Collins. Mm-hmm. A pretty good secondary, probably with the best safety tandem in the AFC with Patrick Chung and Devin McCourty. Malcolm Butler playing out of his mind. And they went 3-1 without Tom Brady. So that just shows how good of a team they are.
You're right, Jimmy. That's in all reality exactly what it is. It comes down to what's going on all over the team with the entire team. Point to Jimmy. And we talked Brady, but let's move the conversation to his play and how it compares to the rest of the NFL. Because Brady was suspended for the first 4 games, at this point in the year, many have removed him from the MVP conversation for the likes of Matthew Stafford, Ezekiel Elliott, and Matt Ryan. So, Jimmy, who's your most valuable player?
Mine, personally, is Derek Carr of the Oakland Raiders. The MVP is basically a quarterback award. The Raiders are 6-2, tied for first in their division. One game behind the Patriots in the AFC. The Raiders have a horrible defense. They rank 32nd in yards allowed. Derek Carr is carrying that team. Yesterday they set an NFL record for the most penalties with 23 in a game. Mm-hmm. So literally the team is trying to find ways to lose, yet Derek Carr keeps rallying the team in the fourth quarter like he did yesterday in overtime for the win. And he's doing it in a division, probably the best division in the NFL, the AFC West. Reigning Super Bowl champions, got to deal with the Chiefs defense, and Derek Carr is my MVP.
Carl?
The MVP for me this year so far is Matt Ryan, Matty Ice. He leads the league in almost every passing category, number 1 in yards, number 1 in touchdowns, number 2 to Brady in passing rating, and Brady has 4 less games, so that number could be escalated a little bit with an asterisk. But Matty Ice has been doing it. He's always a great regular season quarterback, and like Jimmy mentioned, this is a quarterback award. Usually the best quarterback in the league with one of the best teams. They're number 1 in the NFC South with 5-3 record. They came back with a great comeback win against Green Bay yesterday, which is tough to do against Green Bay because usually Aaron Rodgers is. But I definitely have to say Matt Ryan is my MVP so far this season.
And that's a great choice, but the Raiders are 6-2, and Derek Carr threw for 500 yards yesterday. So, unfortunately, Jimmy gets the point, and that's all the time we have in this NFL segment. He takes the victory 2-0, and we're going to head to commercial break. We'll be back right after this to talk NBA and college football.
Welcome back, everyone. Chef Nicole here at our studio kitchen to tell you about the fantastic new breakthrough in cutlery, the Dyna Blade. This knife is the latest in cutting technology. Also, it's extremely safe to use. Okay, folks. Wow. Yeah, that blade sure does cut. Hey, Jim, where's Jim? I'm losing a lot of blood here, guys. Jim, can we cut, please? I'm really starting to feel woozy.
I love my new Dyna Blade. I can cut through anything. And it's super safe. Oh, I did it. Guys, I cut myself. It's not safe.
She's out, guys. Can somebody call an ambulance, please? And cut to the logo. Oh, God, where's her finger? Oh, God, I'm gonna be sick. I can't find a pulse. I
don't know what's wrong with me, Doc. I think I'm just having an existential issue, maybe. What if I'm a nihilist?
I know just a cure.
Gee, Doc. Anything.
It's called MDPL, multidimensional perspective layering, and it's known to have strong effects on the human psyche. It results in the restoration of confidence and a sense of one's place in the universe.
Oh, man, that sounds like the perfect solution to make me myself again.
Well, here goes nothing.
Side effects of multidimensional perspective layering include, but are not limited to, extreme fits of happiness, loss of agitation, loss of stress, thoughts of world peace, a new sense of connectivity with your fellow man.
Welcome back to Hitting the Field. We are back for our championship round that we like to call the Joust. With me are Jimmy Calhoun and Chris Davis, who advanced from the NFL and MLB segments. The championship rounds will always consist of a mishmash of questions depending on what is covered at the top of our show. So today, college football and the NBA. Let's get right to it. We're here at UCF, and so we have to start with another heartbreaking loss for the school's football program. After leading 21-3 at the end of the half and 24-3 in the early third quarter, at Houston, a team that was ranked in the top 10 earlier in the country this season, UCF gave up 28 unanswered to Greg Ward Jr. and company. This loss moves UCF to 4-4 on the season, with losses in double overtime at home against Maryland, a 26-25 loss at home in the literal final second to Temple, and now the collapse at Houston. So I ask you guys, and we'll start with you, Jimmy, who's to blame for these constant second half collapses? Is it the players or the coaches?
It's everyone. It's the offense, the defense, and the coaching. The offense isn't holding these leads. They're playing conservative, which has to do with the coaching play calls, and the defense just can't be doing what they're doing. Last time I checked, football was a game where if one team scores, the other team gets the ball back. 28 unanswered points against Houston is just uncalled for. And what happened against Temple? I mean, Temple had to drive 70 yards in 30 seconds with 0 timeouts, and they did it without incompleting a pass. The defense is at fault. The offense is at fault for not stepping on the gas even with the lead, and the coaching is responsible too for the play calls.
Mm-hmm. Chris?
I think it's way simpler than that. It's simply halftime adjustments. There's a lot of things that we see about UCF that's really good. You're coming off of a season which you didn't win a game. Everything was wrong. Defense, special teams, offense, everything. Here you have a season in which we've seen bright spots. No, this is not the best team in the AAC, but we're not expecting them to be. We're expecting to see progress. We're seeing that. We just nearly beat Houston, a top-ranked team. We just nearly beat Maryland. Mm-hmm. Beating these teams is going to be the next step. Making those halftime adjustments is the next step. You get these leads. You need to figure out, okay, how can we, make sure we're switching it up. Maybe hit you with a play action after, on a third down. Make sure you're stretching the plays. Not consistently going with the same thing when they've already adjusted to it. So it is coaching, but it's everybody figuring out how we can make these adjustments in game instead of just out of game.
Well, one of the biggest things too is going to come down to depth. I mean, we only have so many players on this team that fit this system. A lot of true freshmen playing, including a true freshman quarterback. So that's what's going to happen. Point goes to Chris there. I do have to agree that it is a little simpler than blaming the coaches and the players. It comes down to depth. UCF clearly has no chance of being this season's top 4 team in the country. But Michigan, a team that they lost to early on in the season, is currently ranked number 2 in the country. Tomorrow, the committee will reveal their first edition of the top 4, getting into the college football playoff. We all know Alabama and Michigan are locks at the moment. But who else rounds out your top 4, Chris?
For me, I think it's got to be Clemson and Louisville. They've impressed me the most. When I think about Clemson, it's that team that has made so many mistakes early in the year where people were kind of like, okay, so many expectations for you, but what are you really doing? I think the FSU game kind of bolstered them a little bit. Just their confidence and how they look. They're undefeated, but I think that they just are supposed to be there, and now that they're there, it's time for them. Louisville, the one game they lose was to Clemson.
Fair enough.
In a game that was a high-scoring game. You know, you see Lamar Jackson, and his growth has just been, just something that's immeasurable.
Right. He's basically the Heisman Trophy winner.
Exactly. And it's like, why not have a guy there? I think I'd like him over Washington, him and that team. So I think when you look at Louisville and Clemson, Clemson, Michigan, Alabama is just prime time television.
Absolutely. Jimmy?
Yeah, and if you're asking who the 4 best teams are, I agree with you. Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Louisville. But if you're asking the 4 teams that deserve to be in and what the committee will probably choose tomorrow, is Alabama 1, Michigan 2, Clemson 3, and Washington 4. Washington's undefeated with a big win last weekend against Utah, and they look on pace to be in the Pac-12 championship game. And if they win out and win the Pac-12 championship, then I believe they'll be in too.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that one, Jimmy. Washington, if they can win their conference and run the table and go undefeated, as much as I like Louisville, as much as I like Lamar Jackson, it's not in the cards for them if they're a team with 1 loss that doesn't win the conference. Okay, enough of the college realm. Let's get to the big boys in the National Basketball Association. We're still at the start of this season, so it's early enough for us to make what we will call our preseason predictions. The obvious favorites to win it all are the Warriors and the Cavs. Are you guys crazy enough to tell me that someone else will win this? Let's start with you, Jimmy.
No, I believe the finals matchup was set in the offseason when Kevin Durant made his decision to go to Golden State. I believe it'll be Warriors and Cavs. The Warriors will figure this thing out. I know they struggled opening night against the Spurs, but that was game 1. They'll figure things out during the season. They got 4 All-Pros on their team, possibly 2 of the top 5 players, 3 of the top 15 players, and 4 of the top 20 players on their team. They're going to figure things out, run through the West. And the Cavs have no competition in the East. Boston's on the come up, but Boston just doesn't have enough talent and doesn't have a scorer to compete with Cleveland and LeBron James.
Very fair.
I'd have to agree. Clearly, I think Cavs have no competition. They don't have anyone that really can compete with them on the same level as them when it's time. When it comes to the Warriors, everybody's woofing at that blowout that they suffered to the Spurs. But you have to realize the dynamics of the game. You're talking about a pick and roll with Steph Curry and Draymond Green at the top of the key, and you got Kevin Durant on the wing. You have Clay on the wing, and you have Iguodala coming in as your cutter.
It really is unbelievable.
It's unguardable. You put let me see Paul Gasol come out there on Kevin Durant. It's gonna be barbecue chicken. It's gonna be cooking on Thanksgiving all day. He's gonna milk those guys. So all I gotta say is, when is Warriors Cavs, and how long is this series gonna be?
Absolutely. I'm going to have to go with you on that one, Chris. The barbecue chicken and Thanksgiving is really what got me there. We referenced the Cavs and the Warriors, and they both have some MVP candidates themselves, like we just named. But those span throughout the league. We've seen an angry Russ, a motivated Brow, and the robot Kawhi Leonard all get off to hot starts as the season has gone along. So who do you believe will be the MVP of the league this year? Jimmy?
I really want to go with the underdog in Damian Lillard, but I don't think they'll win enough games this year. I'm probably going to have to go with Russell Westbrook. They might not win the standard amount of games, which I think is 50 for an MVP, but Russell Westbrook's stats are just going to be unbelievable. Everyone said, or the talk has been, is he going to average a triple-double? Is he not? And people said he wasn't because he can't really control how many rebounds he gets. He can't really control a lot of things that go into that, but he knows his stats in the middle of the game. He knows how many rebounds he's got to get. He knows how many assists he's got to get, and the scoring is always going to be there. He might average 30 with a triple-double.
I mean, he may be Oscar Robertson this year. Yeah. It's phenomenal to see what he's been able to do.
And he's on a mission
thus far, and he's angry. We'll say that for sure. Chris?
In fantasy, I go with you. 32, 12, and 15 the other night. Nasty. You know, he's a very ferocious guard, and the team is 3-0 early in the season. But you know who else is undefeated? The Spurs are. Kawhi Leonard, who went and trained with Kobe Bryant this summer, he's averaging about 28. He's doing things like getting 5 steals a game. He's orchestrating the entire offense, an offense without Tim Duncan for the first time.
Yep.
Pau Gasol is limited in time. LaMarcus Aldridge, they have him in and out of the game as Pop likes to do to monitor his minutes. But Kawhi is getting all of the bulk of the work. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a Spurs team that's going to shock some teams. You're going to see a Kawhi Leonard that is a two-way player. You're also going to see a Kawhi Leonard who's going to be a top 5 scorer this season because he's he's added some versatility to his game. He's inside, he's outside, he's got a little post up, and I think that that's going to help the Spurs, and it's going to lead to him being MVP.
As great as Kawhi has been, Russell Westbrook has just been silly. It's unbelievable what he's been doing on a nightly basis just to start the year, and I really think he could play 80 games this year, and 40 of them he could have triple-doubles. I mean, not just average it, he could literally put up 40 triple-doubles. So that would be unbelievable. But here we go. Jimmy gets it. The final question, the one to win it all. Every year there's a team that exceeds expectations, and there's one that falls short of expectations, maybe of their lofty goals they've set. In your mind, Chris, who will be that team this year?
I'm a homer from Detroit, 313. So you know I'm going to go Detroit Pistons as my team that's going to exceed expectations. Last year, they got to the 8th seed. People were like, okay, I think we see something. Every game they played, the Cleveland Cavaliers was within 5 points, except for one game in which they lost in double digits. They played them extremely tight. They're ferocious. They got that bad boys part 3 in them, in their DNA. When we got Reggie Jackson out right now, Ish Smith is taking over as point guard currently. But with Andre Drummond taking that next step in a leadership role, with Marcus Morris and Tobias Harris, I think their front line is going to be bolstered, and I see them as a 3 or 4 seed. I think they're going to be a top seed going into the season.
I got to go with the Boston Celtics. They lost in the first round last year against Atlanta, but then they took Atlanta's best player, Al Horford.
Yep.
They haven't won their division in quite a while. Toronto's been really good, but I think this is the year they top Toronto. Isaiah Thomas is an all-star. Al Horford will be an all-star. Jay Crowder's only getting better. And Avery Bradley went 11 for 8 of 11 threes last night. 31 points, 11 rebounds. He's only getting better. He could be on the first team all-pro defense, which he's talked about.
Right.
I think not only can Boston win their division, they can go into the conference finals against Cleveland as the number 2 seed in the East.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that anyone in the East can exceed expectations because, well, how competitive are they really going to be? But I'm going to have to go with the Celtics on this one and a victory for Jimmy Calhoun.
All right.
So make sure to check out his night vision on our Twitter later on. All right, that's it for us here on Hitting the Field. Thank you for joining us for our first episode. Check out our Twitter at Hitting the Field for future updates and tonight's night vision. The Hitting the Field family would like to thank you for being involved with us and watching every part of it. And by the way, go vote. Thank you guys for joining us.